mean, previously you could tell if someone was a console because there's an API called is 10-foot display, and what Roblox want you to do is make your UI bigger because people are all the way over here and their TV is all the way over there.
That's actually really interesting that you mentioned that. As a developer, I've always used that setting to determine it, but I never actually understood why it was called that. But that makes
You
a
thought
lot
that
of
they
sense.
had a massive 10-foot wide
yeah,
screen.
I was like, wow, I don't know. It was always very curious as to why it was called that. That's very interesting. But yeah,
sat in a cinema room or something. Yeah. Welcome to Beyond the Blocks. This week we're talking about the rollout of AI text generation on Roblox, voice chat finally coming to consoles, and plenty more from this week. But first, we're your hosts. I'm Adam.
I'm Fedor.
I'm Anthony.
Let's start with this week's roundup. And Fedor, what have you got for us first?
Right. So a couple of weeks ago on stage at RDC 2025, head of product Karun Shana had a fluid conversation with an LLM-powered shopkeeper who responded to his requests in real time. Now, Roblox are expanding developers and users' access to their text generation API, paving the future for a whole new level of NPC interaction. I think the best way to put this change into perspective is to take a look at the history of NPC and user interaction on Roblox, specifically in the context of text communication. One of the earliest ways Roblox games conveyed narrative was through these static sort of story games where you'd see humanoids arranged in different positions and they'd have little text bubbles over them saying, oh, I'm being bullied at school and whatnot, or my principal is evil, and these were super rudimentary and you could not interact with them besides just walking along from frame to frame to frame. Then we had the slightly more interactive chat-like interactions that developers were able to set up. You'd be able to click on a little chat bubble above NPCs' heads, and then they'd have some pre-written dialogue for you that you could then select responses to. So a little bit more interactive. You'd have the ability to, ask them a couple of predefined questions, and there'd be dialogue trees. But it was very, very difficult for developers to set up. And also it, once you ran through all of the options in the dialogue, there really wasn't a whole lot for you to do. So it didn't feel like a truly meaningful interaction, just kind of like, okay, go do this. How do I go do this? This is how you go do that. There was no room for any kind of variety or replayability there. And kind of as a result of that, there's not really large elements of narrative in Roblox games at the moment. However, this change could be a really meaningful step towards a new direction, because what this will allow is to have developers integrate large language based models into their NPCs to allow users to interface with non-playable characters as they would with regular players, just using the existing text chat. This is really exciting for players in a lot of ways because you can see a lot of potential in the sense that perhaps instead of interacting with an NPC in a game where they're giving you a quest through a couple of UI elements, perhaps you can have a fluid conversation with that NPC. And a developer is able to integrate this a lot more smoother, I suppose, because instead of pre-writing massive dialogue trees and interaction combinations, they can just give this API a prompt and then have it fluidly generate responses to player text and progress that. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
It sounds pretty cool. I do remember the demo at RDC, and I think they combined it with kind of the text-to-speech system as well, so that the output of this text generation was then an input to text-to-speech, and you had this full kind of proper NPC interaction where it's talking to you, you've got subtitles on the screen, and it felt quite natural. I think the one thing that demo and sort of everything you said makes me wonder is the latency on this, because presumably this is being sent over the cloud to some LLM somewhere, and how fluid can it be if you're having to wait a few seconds for it to come back and then a few more seconds for the speech to come out. It wasn't too bad on the demo, I don't think, but yeah, I think that's something I want to play around with. I haven't explored this feature yet.
I do wonder if someone's going to prompt inject it. That's a little bit of a concern. Or just how how will the developer have control over what it says, over what it
That's
does?
true.
Will be very interesting.
I guess there's two different ways, right? You could have predefined prompts, but just the random nature of LLMs mean you get a slightly different answer, but the developers fully control that. Same as the old system with the dialogues, it's predefined responses, but because it's going through an LLM, you're getting a slightly different experience each time to keep it fresh. I guess the other option is, taking player input and giving that to the LLM. I do wonder what that looks like behind the scenes. How much headache is this for developers to put guardrails in, or has Roblox already done that?
I wonder if they're going to start charging for this, because you know what they've been doing with the extra data stores.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
extended cloud services.
Yeah, an interesting point you guys brought up also consisted of safety, because this change, the specific rollout of actually when this episode will be releasing, is also very significant, not because developers haven't had the ability to interface with LLMs on the platform before. You've been able to do that through platforms like OpenAI and other comparable LLMs, and then just an open cloud API. What's really interesting about Roblox's native implementation of this is that they've come in with their own safety and moderation features, which means that they've kind of locked down their own model here. Or at least I believe they're using an open source model, but they've, using the on-platform API instead of just an API request out to OpenAI servers. The moderation that it goes through is slightly different, which allows for developers to add these AI NPCs, which could technically generate a lot of different things into games that are not restricted. Because previously, if you had any sort of AI-based interactions, Roblox was really skeptical about the safety because, naturally LLMs kind of have a history in the broader tech space of hallucinations and throwing out random stuff. And Roblox has been trying to approach that very carefully. But now, with this ability to integrate their own API, it seems like they're confident enough in the, funnily enough, AI-powered moderation tools they're rolling out to effectively censor and filter the stuff that this LLM is outputting to show it to users who are under 18. Because previously, it wasn't very feasible to make a game with LLM interactions because you'd be locking yourself out of a massive audience.
Yeah, that's interesting, the sort of AI watching over AI kind of thing in terms of moderation. I can imagine it's hard because, there's a problem with any games where there's user-generated content, right? If it's static, the developer has pre-programmed everything, and if there's something that's bad in the game, it's the developer's fault, you moderate them. If it's a game where there's UGC, like any of these building games, Bloxburg, that kind of thing, the player, in theory, could build something that's offensive, and then ideally you moderate the player if you can. But if your LLM comes back with a bad response and it wasn't necessarily the fault of the player who prompted it, you can't really moderate your own LLM if Roblox are the one providing it. So it'll be very interesting to see. I'm sure some people on the platform will try and push its limits and see what happens. But yeah, it's very, very exciting. I'm glad that it doesn't force experiences to be restricted, because I think that was a big blocker to devs exploring this and picking it up.
I think there was a case when an LLM, I'm not going to say, I don't know which model it was, but I don't want to defame anyone or say it was the wrong one, but there was a case where an LLM assisted someone in harming themselves, I believe. It was quite a fairly famous case. I'm not too sure about the details about it, but I wonder if they're aware of that. And
I think that there was something in the announcement, right, on this. I think I saw something about extended interactions.
That's right. Yeah, that's a point I was planning on bringing up also. At the moment, it seems like the approach they're taking is I'm vaguely familiar what you're referring to, Anthony, and I think they're specifically trying to avoid developers. They're trying to use this LLM tool as not really the core premise of a game or experience rather, but rather a small component. So their goal isn't for developers to create like a platform where the entire point of the game is communicating with like this fictional character, or
You have seen that with
talking
some
to
like
a confidant. Yeah,
some
because
new
that's
features though. Like people will
typically
just make a game, and the game is just that new feature, voice chat.
exactly, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think here the objective is that this isn't like, you know, a game in its own. It's simply an addition to existing narrative tools or communication tools. So, you know, you go into a sword fighting game, and perhaps instead of navigating a sword shop UI, you talk to a shopkeeper, not like you go into a game where you talk to a person just nonstop and you like confide in them or whatever, which is where a lot of those more concerning applications of like parasocial relationships and how to navigate that, which is a question really for the broader tech industry.
Yeah, definitely. AI best friends, AI romantic partners, those kind of things
Mhm.
that raise a lot of ethical questions. It sounds like a good feature. Is there anything else that devs or players need to know about this?
The main thing that is really exciting, I think, about this is just how easy it is to implement it. I was looking through the API documentation, and it's really as simple as getting getting a service as you would with any other existing Roblox service, giving it a system prompt, and then just saying generate a response to this, and then you can throw it into whatever UI element or text prompt you have, which is really interesting, like I said, because previously when I'd worked on games where I'd try to implement LLMs, it was a whole lot of work because I'd have to go to a third-party service. I'd have to, you know, put in my billing information because I'd be charged for all of these token usages. I'd have to go take the user input, run it through the text chat filter, which wasn't really designed for this sort of thing. Then I'd have to send that filtered thing either back to the user if it got filtered, or to the LLM. The LLM would give me something, I'd have to filter that. If that didn't work through the filter, I'd have to go back to the LLM and say, no, give me something else. And it was really just a pain to set up. And that's, I think, is why we've not really seen it integrated into any actual games besides the few gimmick ones I've seen where it's just like talk to ChatGPT but in Roblox. So overall, the ease of access and the easing of restrictions on moderation means that this should be a lot more accessible to developers, and we should hopefully see a lot of really exciting experiences using this soon.
It's quite cool. Nice. I know we've been on this topic for a while. I have two quick questions that came from what you just said. One was I'm interested to see what the limits are here. I don't know if they've published the limits or if you know, but Anthony earlier mentioned about, are we going to have to pay for it? You mentioned there that for third parties, you have to pay for it. Assuming this is free right now in the beta, they must have some limits on this. Do we know anything about that?
I believe, if I remember, I'm pulling up the post right now. Yes, there we go. So they're stating that the baseline utilization continues to be free during the beta launch. However, every single experience will have a usage limit of 100 requests per minute per experience, which will scale with concurrent users. So pretty similar to a lot of the APIs we've seen, to cloud APIs or really anything else, where it'll scale with your user experiences. So generally, 100 requests per minute seems pretty reasonable. I'd imagine if they'll probably roll out a similar feature to those extended data stores, where if for whatever reason your game is, you have hundreds of NPCs talking to a user at once somehow, perhaps that'd be a special
But
case where
NPCs
you
talking to
wanna.
NPCs.
I was going to say bot to bot if they just
Like,
run away and have a whole conversation with each other. Nice. The second question I had was the filtering. I wonder if you're still going to have to do that same round trip of checking whether or not it gets through the filter, or whether this is taking into account, can you tell it this is going to be displayed to this particular user, so it needs to be filtered ready for them, or are you still going to have that problem?
That's a really interesting question. Looking at the sample code they've provided in the reference implementation, it seems like you're able to just give because I guess the advantage of it being generate text to sync call in a Roblox service is that it has all of that context. And based off the implementation I'm seeing here, I'm not seeing any additional calls to text chat filtering service. So it seems like it's able to, because it's a model that's, designed by Roblox for Roblox implementation, it seems like you're able to just give it a prompt and then have the response and display directly to the user. However, with differing user moderation policies, like if you have a user who's under 13, that's giving the LLM a prompt, and then how that goes back is a little unclear at the moment. We might have to look into that a little bit more.
Nice. If that's all we have on the AI text generation, I think Anthony's got a headline for us next.
Okay, so next up we have the news that Roblox have extended their light ranges from 60 to 120. So they've doubled the limit of how far lights can be illuminated from. What does that mean? Well, developers in games like us are able to create different types of light sources. So there's I think there's at least 3. There's a surface light, a point light, and
point, surface, and spotlight.
Yeah.
Yes.
So an issue that lots of developers were having in games, and it's certainly an issue that I was having, it's an issue that Adam was having, was that after a certain distance, the light just cuts out, and there is a hard limit that they set on how far that light can illuminate stuff. I suppose this probably wasn't too much of an issue back in the day. Like these instances for creating lights have been around for a really long time. Back in the day when, everything was rendered, basically things are right in front of you, and then everything in the distance is just kind of gone, and then the render distance is abysmal. But now we're getting more high fidelity games, and the demand for it is there. So very welcome change. Another thing they pointed out is that it will possibly bring performance improvements, because a developer could put 1 light instead of 4 to light up the same area, and it looks better because you haven't got weird overlaps.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess like when you say 60 to 120, you think half as many, but in 2 dimensions, only a quarter as many is going to be massive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because of the square law, whatever, inverse square law. It spreads out, illuminates. What is it? You have a square there, and then you go double distance, illuminates 4 times the area. So that really is quite huge. I mean, I know we had issues with trains and tunnels, and we couldn't light up far enough. I think you might have had some issues in your game.
Yeah,
Adam.
Definitely. I think we've got a bowling game that is sort of meant to be at least a little bit realistic. It uses the realistic lighting, and it's set at nighttime. So we've tried to make it that all the light is coming from actual light sources, rather than sort of invisible light sources, which you sometimes had to do to cover a big area. But yeah, exactly. We had this problem. We had dark spots. We had overlapping bits. And so just being able to do that with, a quarter as many is just going to be massive for that game.
It does increase, the performance impact does increase exponentially, apparently.
And I think we could probably pull this up again. The Roblox account recently reposted some work by Fluorite, which shows a really impressive looking forest scene that looks straight out of Unreal Engine, to be honest. I'm sure we have this pulled up, but
I think they've been around for a while, haven't they?
Yeah, I believe so.
You see those things
Currently
popping up
it's
sometimes on Twitter with like insane lighting.
It's really interesting to see how the Roblox is with stuff announced at RDC, like emissive maps and a lot of other stuff. They're really scaling up the lighting capabilities of the platform, even as the top experiences continue to be Grow a Garden and Steal a Brain Row, which are very elementary, in terms of lighting. It's really interesting to see that the tools to create these really visually impressive games and doing it in a performative manner is actually pretty much there for Roblox developers. So it's really exciting to see what the future of more visually high fidelity games can be if users are looking for that.
That's it. I think Roblox wants to be that one platform that has everything, right? The full range, up to AAA standards. But yeah, if you're listening to this episode, definitely go and check out that post on X. We'll have it in the show notes, because that does look very, very cool.
Yeah, so this is live now. So that would be interesting to see. There's no studio beta for it or anything, so it would be interesting to see coming out to games fairly soon.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with some more roundup news and also a trivia question for you. So we'll be right back after this. We hope you're enjoying the new format of Beyond the Blocks. It's taken quite a bit of planning and prep to get to a point where we can commit to recording and releasing one of these episodes every single week.
Normally these break sections would be filled with an exciting advert or sponsor message, but with this being the first episode of the season, we thought it'd be best for us to use this time to tell you about the new structure.
Some episodes, like today's, will mostly be the latest news and announcements from the past week, looking at it from both a developer's and a player's point of view.
Other episodes might include things like deep dives into a particular topic we've been researching, an experience or game one of us found that we want to highlight and talk about, or some news from the wider community.
You can comment on this episode or join the Last Level Studios, Guilded, or Discord servers to let us know your thoughts and suggestions for topics that we can cover. Links will be in the episode description or in the show notes. Okay, welcome back. We've got some more news to cover, and it's my topic next. We've got some UIStroke improvements. So Roblox have unveiled some new UIStroke improvements that are available for developers to play around with in a studio beta, including unlimited border-style UI strokes. So they're not yet publishable to games, but developers can start playing around with this. So first of all, what is UIStroke? Most of you might not know it by name. Essentially, it's a way of developers adding borders to UI objects or text as well. It can be used for both. But these changes are mostly about borders. So say you had a button that you wanted to outline, something like that. This is what that's for. So there's a few different changes that they've rolled out here. One is scaling thickness, which might be helpful for different screen sizes. So before you just defined it in pixels, which meant that if you had a very small screen with fewer pixels, the border would appear thicker because 4 pixels takes up more of the screen, for example. And then on a larger screen, it might seem like a really, really thin border because those same 4 pixels might be a smaller fraction of the screen. So that's quite interesting, and that will help make more scalable UI designs. So we might see that coming out. The next one is custom border alignment and offset. So this is just a bit more flexibility over the type of border. I think before it was pretty much just an external border around something. Now you can have it as an internal border. You can have it halfway, so half the border's outside the object, half is in, and you can kind of configure the different offsets for that, which is quite handy. And the last one is unlimited border strokes. Not quite sure who needs this. I don't know why you'd want multiple borders. I can imagine a couple of them and maybe some cool effects or animations by enabling or disabling different ones. But the demo that they showed on the post had like 10 or something all stacked up, which seemed a bit crazy. So yeah, that's the change. I don't know if this solves problems for either of you guys, Fedora or Anthony. I'm not sure that I've come across a need for these other than maybe the scaled one. But yeah, what do you guys think?
You might have noticed my head eagerly bobbing up and down as you've presented this topic. You mentioned wondering who could possibly need multiple UI strokes. It's me. Hello.
Amazing.
As somebody who's done a lot of my own UI work, I've spent way too much time having to do really weird hacky workarounds where I have to like create one frame and then put a stroke over it and then put another frame inside that frame just so I can have like a nice effect where I have like a slightly lighter and then a slightly darker stroke. And it's always been something that like complicates my structure and goes all the way to my code where I'm like writing frame.innerFrame.realInnerFrame.UI stroke. And I'm really looking forward to being able to implement this. It's also a great accessibility and scale thing because in the past, I've always had to write custom implementations to rescale my strokes on different devices. Because whenever I'm designing something on my, beautiful ultra-wide monitor, I'm not really thinking about how those scales will work on a tiny mobile phone.
That's us.
So then I'll open up that UI and I'll see like, oh wow, this UI stroke is like taking up half the screen, and I have to go figure out a custom implementation. And it's always like a thing that's like, why couldn't they just solve this for me? This feels like such a simple solution, and now they finally have. So I'm incredibly excited to get to use this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, our teams use a lot of line slicing, which can become a pain. And Roblox design slicing has some really weird edge cases in it as well. That's different to other line slicing. But our designer will design some crazy button, and I'm like, no, you can't do this. You're going to have to change this because I can't make this work with the line slicing. And then like sometimes I make a line slicing template, and it's just been a lot of work. And if you're just getting started on the platforms, I feel like a lot of things, like a lot of their new APIs are really geared. I'm thinking of input action system and these sorts of things are really geared towards being powerful, but also being approachable to beginners, and not having to nine slice. Because to make a button which is just an outline, a curved and has curved edges, you have to make a 9-slice template, figure out the pixel grids, and upload that as an image. But then with this, you would just add an instance and it just does it. So I think that makes it a lot more accessible, and it makes it a lot faster, less faff for me, easier for new developers to get into the platform. I was quite interested if you're going to be able to animate them, because I know our designer's he's gonna have some fun with this, and he's gonna ask us to do some crazy stuff with animations.
I can imagine
we'll see.
some cool animations of like just turning them on and off, like sort of you can imagine rings around the thing that you're supposed to click on, like appearing and disappearing, that kind of thing. That was one use case I was thinking of. But yeah, other than maybe unlocking some of those things to developers who have otherwise had to do custom implementations, this probably doesn't change too much for players, but it might just mean that you get slightly nicer borders and UI strokes than you've seen before. Like I say, this is in a studio beta right now, so you won't see it in games immediately, but hopefully devs can play around with it and be ready for when it does release.
I think one interesting angle Anthony mentioned is, as somebody who's done a lot of UI design over the years, for a while, the way doing good UI design, like basically any kind of pretty UI design, meant doing everything in Photoshop or Figma and then individually importing all of those images, which is just a whole lot of work, and just about everybody hates doing it, but somebody has to do it. And that it seems like Roblox is really concentrated on bringing a lot of these really powerful design tools, like the style sheets feature they announced a couple of months ago at this point. It seems like they're really committed to their instance-based philosophy, where you should be able to get these really nice effects without bringing in a bunch of images. And I think I'm very much in the developer mindset here, just ranting about how much easier this will make my workflow. But I think a really hands-on application for players is that loading a bunch of these images on a game startup is very inefficient, and I've seen a lot of players complain in my games where I want to make all of my UI super pretty, I want to load a million images, but then if you're running on perhaps like a cellular connection that isn't very fast, it's like, wow, I have to wait 15 seconds for all of this UI to become visible. Now developers will be able to achieve a lot of these effects using instances and frames, which will load a lot faster, because you're not loading pixels, you're just loading a rectangle right here with a couple of strokes. So that's, I think, really powerful.
It'll be interesting to see if there's a performance hit with it as well.
Yeah.
Because it might not take that memory hit, but there might be some extra processing going on.
Yeah, that's true. It'll have to be a bit of a balance. I think if you had loads of these everywhere, it would be a performance thing. I think that's why previously it was limited of how many you could have. It was more of a performance thing than anything else. So hopefully they've made some improvements that mean that this isn't so bad. But we'll have to see. That's all I had for UIStroke, so I'll pass it back over to Anthony for our next headline. Okay, so next up is that Roblox are finally bringing voice chat to consoles, and apparently it's already live on PlayStation.
So for a long time, Roblox have been apparently neglecting consoles. They didn't even have text chat up until a few months ago, where we had lots of complainers complaining that they couldn't name their things because platforms didn't support these things. I mean, we had to explain this out of our control. So what I've heard is there have been issues with platforms imposing rules and based on the age rating that Roblox has. And of course, platforms want you to use their own sort of party voice chat systems as well. But it will be interesting to see, because in our game, this was one of the things that was limiting the adoption of voice chat. We spent loads and loads of time working on a really fluid voice chat system, and then basically no one, I mean, some people might disagree with me, but basically no one used it. And yeah, I think part of the reason is that you couldn't talk. People like to play cross-platform on Roblox. It's like one of the biggest selling points. And if you can't talk to like a whole faction of people, it's just kind of pointless. So
Yeah.
it's not yet live on Xbox. They haven't given us a time frame for that. But that will apparently be coming out as soon as they can in the next few months.
Feels like it gets consoles closer to being sort of first-class citizen, because it feels like prior to 2025, they've been excluded from a lot of things. We had to do the same type of thing on one of our games, where text chat was quite important for one of the features, because it was sort of player-to-player interaction, and there just wasn't player-to-player interaction when one of the players was on a console before this. I'm curious, there's been the announcements of the ROG Ally X, Xbox Ally X, is that the name? That is a handheld console, basically. And I know that Roblox have been talking about that quite a lot this year. I wonder if that was part of the driver here, or maybe, as you say, the sort of the rating system changes mean that there isn't one rating for the whole Roblox app. It's now rated per experience. That means that you can sort of have this these kind of features there that wouldn't necessarily make it 3+ on the App Store on Xbox. I think this is a great feature.
It's kind of a similar time as well to the new screen size API. I mean, this is a few weeks ago, but I think it just shows that they sort of care a little bit more about different devices, because I mean, previously you could tell if someone was a console because there's an API called is 10-foot display. And what Roblox want you to do is make your UI bigger, because people are all the way over here and their TV is all the way over there. But now they're sort of unifying that and making it, they're paying more attention to it. So they seem to be paying more attention to consoles. And they've also got one for smaller devices as well, which might be for handheld consoles, possibly mobile devices too. So that's interesting that their focus is really there right now on expanding and making crossplay quite a seamless experience.
That's actually really interesting that you mentioned that 10-foot display. As a developer, I've always used that setting to determine it, but I never actually understood why it was called that. But that makes a lot of sense.
You thought that they had a massive 10-foot wide screen.
I was like, wow, I don't know. I was always very curious as to why it was called that. That's very interesting. But
sat in a cinema room or something. Yeah.
As somebody who started playing Roblox, I still have my original Xbox controller from 2017 now. It's stuck with me just to play test my own games. I remember back in the very early days when Xbox players didn't even have text chat, and it really felt like I was, as you said, a second-class citizen in my own little world where I'm completely removed from any of the social elements of Roblox. I was just there throwing my knife and murder mystery and completely missing out on any of the social interactions going on. So it's very exciting that Roblox is finally starting to gain enough leverage as a platform to sort of work out these, platforms are recognizing that, hey, you can't really treat Roblox like Grand Theft Auto as one cohesive game. It's really a platform where, some games are rated this way, some games are rated this way, and that seems to be a really powerful tool for, bringing players together through these more specific moderation and safety features. The next segment we have is the weekly trivia question. We don't know the answers or the questions ahead of time, and we will do our best to reflect. If you have any ideas as to the answer, make sure to drop it down in the comments below. So this week's trivia question is, what was Roblox called before the name was changed to Roblox? And that's
I know the answer.
Actually a pretty good one. I think this was actually a question. They hosted a Hasm and Henry 101 developer panel at RDC, and this was actually one of the trivia questions. So I do also know the answer.
I don't think I know the answer to this one. I think I imagine it has something to do with sort of physics or engineering, because I vaguely remember the story of David Baszucki kind of building it more as not necessarily a tool, but like a bit of a sandbox or playground type thing.
The physics learning type platform, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know how true that story is, and also whether it went through a few other names before finally becoming Roblox. So yeah, this one's a bit of a mystery to me. I guess we won't reveal it if you two know the answer. We'll leave it up to the audience to comment below, and we'll come back next week to confirm what the true answer is and see if both of you were right or not. As there may have been some other names that it went through.
So yeah, make sure to comment down what you think Roblox was called before it was changed to Roblox in the comments below, because we'll actually be selecting a couple of the correct answers and showing them on screen. So go ahead.
Awesome. We're going to cut for one more break, but we'll be back for the last weekly roundup topic after that. So be sure to stick around. We're trying to make sure that everyone who's interested in the Roblox platform gets to see this podcast and the news that we're covering each week.
To help us spread the word, you can help us feed the algorithms by liking the episode on YouTube and using the new hype feature if you're catching us within the first 7 days.
You can give us a rating, and of course, commenting your answers for trivia or your opinions on any of the episode's topics helps to grow the conversation.
We appreciate the support. Let's get back to the episode. Okay, and we're back for the final topic from this week's weekly roundup. This is improved server management, another fairly developer-facing one, but we'll talk about how it affects some players as well. Server management has basically seen a big improvement with better visibility for developers and a couple of features that nearly make things better for players when a game's been updated. I'll come back to that nearly in a moment. But what I first wanted to do is just define what we're talking about here and see what some of the current problems are. So server management, well, a step back, what are servers? When you play an experience on Roblox, there's a limit to how many people can play together in one server. Popular games will have a lot of servers. The practical limit when things start breaking is maybe 100. That's probably the biggest that you'll see in a game out there. A lot of games are much lower, so obviously these games with hundreds of thousands of players have lots and lots of servers. When the developer has a new version of the game, a new update that they want to roll out, they need to restart the servers to kind of get rid of the old content and get players on the new version. And the old servers are basically just stopped and the people are kicked out, so sort of temporarily disconnected. Developers had two options historically: restart all servers immediately or restart servers that weren't on the latest version. And I think that took a few minutes, roughly 6 minutes, to go through and restart all of the old servers, but leave the new ones still running. And that was all that we had to choose.
If it works.
If it works, exactly. So I was going to pass it off to you two and sort of ask, we're all developers, you've all been involved in game updates before. What are some of the challenges that historically you've had when trying to decide, when to restart servers and how to restart servers? I'll jump to Anthony first. What kind of problems have you had?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird decision. You don't really know how to make it. Because like when you shut down servers, you do see like, a few hundred people logged off. But,
hoping that they all come back and rejoin the new servers, right? And aren't so disrupted that they just leave the game.
Yeah, I think as well, especially if you can like schedule them, I think this would be an absolute game changer as well. I think it's also more clear about what it does, because like sometimes I don't really know what migrate does. What's the difference between migrate and shut down all servers? Which may sound stupid. Maybe I should look it up. And sometimes migrate just didn't work for me. But I have looked at the new UI and I think it's incredible. I think it will make a huge difference to my quality of life.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
very, very much looking forward to it.
I'll cover all the things that have changed. I just want to give Fedor a chance as well, if there were any other considerations that you've had when trying to restart servers other than just, a player's going to come back.
Yeah, so I've worked on a couple of projects where we've done pretty major update releases where we build up our CCU in the hours leading up to an update, like peaking, 10,000 or whatever players. And it's it's honestly, I've probably gotten so many years taken off my life just hitting that shutdown button and making sure that I'm doing it all right and that the latest version is published. And it's really a lot of work, and having this entire system be based on just like one UI button that, you know, isn't like Anthony mentioned, to be honest, is not very clearly communicated to developers. Is having an actual dedicated panel to scheduling that and monitoring that is going to make live ops for me a lot easier. And I know a lot of my friends who are maintaining, you know, like that games where my 10,000 concurrent player count is like absolutely nothing, when they're maintaining updates that have the potential to impact Roblox infrastructure as a whole because they're shutting down massive, like hundreds of thousands of players. Being able to properly control that instead of just saying shut them all down is going to be massively helpful for Roblox as a platform, and obviously for developers.
100%. Yeah. I think I agree with both your points. Lack of visibility of what's going on. Did my button click actually do something? The fear of players
Did I really press
coming
it?
back. Exactly, that's it. You're sort of like, because it takes minutes, but you don't know if all those minutes have happened or not. You know, there's no way to look at the server list and know, is that the latest or not? So yeah, all those problems. One more problem that I wanted to throw in the mix that we've had specifically on some games that I've worked on is where you've got quite a long game loop or quite a long duration mission or quest or whatever that's going on that requires the player to finish that in a single session. So one that we've worked on before is a train simulation game where you've got to drive the full length of the route before you get your XP. And some of those routes are like 40 minutes long, right? So you've got to be in the game that whole time. And players don't want you to just shut down the server in the middle of that and then have to redo all that progress. You know, you're 39 minutes into a 40-minute mission and then suddenly you've got to restart. So that was the other problem I wanted to throw in the mix, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment as well. So the changes that have happened, essentially we now have a dedicated page for this, for each of your experiences, that shows you the number of servers across all the places as well, if you've got sort of sub-places within the experience, the number of players that are in each of those servers, and which ones are outdated or not, based on the latest update, and also shows you how many players are in each of those as well. So you could have 1,000 players in the game and 900 of them are on outdated servers. That might weigh into your decision of whether to restart or not. It also shows you the date and the time of the latest published version and the number as well, so you can be confident that you did actually hit publish, that you are ready to restart because it is the latest version. So that's really, really helpful, just in terms of the visibility and you seeing what's going on before you make any decisions. And that screen updates every 5 seconds as well, so it's a nice live update. You don't have to keep hitting F5 to see what's going on. Then when it comes to making actions, they've improved that as well. So you can choose whether to only restart servers with outdated versions or not. We kind of had that control before. But now there's another feature that delays the server restart. Anywhere from 1 to 60 minutes you can choose. So that's really, really helpful because it removes that server from matchmaking. Anyone clicking the play button will no longer end up in one of those outdated servers or one of those servers that is pending a restart. That's really, really helpful. It's marketed as a way to give users chance to finish up what they're doing and leave naturally. But yeah, that's what it's meant to be for. This is where I think there's a huge miss, where I say it's nearly improved things for players. Because this sounds great. On the surface, it sounds like this would solve the problem that I was talking about of letting players finish their mission and choose when they want to move to a new server. The problem is the player doesn't know that this is happening. You scheduled this delay and the player gets no notice, no message comes up, nothing's exposed that the developer could use to show a message either. It's just completely silent other than the developer seeing this on the back end. So that means I could schedule it for 40 minutes and hope that everyone finishes the route that they're driving. But there's nothing to stop them from just starting another one because they didn't know that the restart's coming. The only thing you might notice as a player is you become lonely over time as no one else can join the server. So only people who were in it at the time are still there. So that's the miss in my opinion. I think if developers have the problem that I'm describing, you still have to make a custom system with this, and there's no way to to connect it together. But otherwise, this is quite nice and quite helpful, and you can see sort of the progression of those restarts as well. You can see you triggered it on this time. It tells you we're waiting X many minutes before doing it. It shows you how many servers have been shut down and moved over. So it solves all of the other problems we raised. What do you guys think about the new server management? Does this solve all of your problems?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think I personally have some pretty basic systems set up in my games where I have a off Roblox GitHub action, very technical, but basically I just have a little flag that I can change that says update in this many seconds, and then it shows a big billboard in my game that tells users that like, hey, all servers are about to get shut down in 30 minutes, 20 minutes, however many minutes. But it'd be really great if I could integrate that system into Roblox's stuff without relying on a third party. But at least for now, it seems like this is more of a back-end quality of life feature for developers as opposed to anything that would meaningfully change in gameplay user experience, like you said.
Yeah, that's a cool idea, Fedor. I might steal it. I don't know. We probably won't be bothered. We'll probably just wait until they give us the tools. But I think it's a massive improvement. It would be nice if they gave us the ability to show a message, though.
Yeah, I think that people messaged on, sort of commented on the forum saying that they'd like this feature. It's not currently on the roadmap, but they didn't completely dismiss the possibility of it. But yeah, either just a built-in message so that everyone gets the same kind of message regardless of which experience they're in, or if the dev could configure it, then even better. Otherwise, I do think this is very, very helpful. At the very least, it'll make sure that we confidently restart and you don't end up with multiple restarts back to back where you didn't think it did it, or the publish failed and you didn't realize and you were just restarting to the same version. All of those kind of problems that we've definitely had in the past.
I also want to schedule it for 3 a.m.
Yeah, the fact that you can only delay by up to 60 minutes is very helpful for that kind of natural restarting, making sure no one else can join them. But also, yeah, maybe scheduling one's helpful. I guess there's a danger of if the new version doesn't work, right? If there's something broken with it and you've gone to bed and you don't see that the error report spikes up. Yeah,
I'd probably get told if I did that.
Probably.
Well, that's all we've got for you this week. Come back for the next episode next week for all the latest Roblox news and features.
Like Anthony said, make sure to appease the algorithm by liking, sharing, and letting us know your thoughts in the comments, along with what you thought Roblox was called before the name was changed to Roblox.
Beyond the Blox is produced by Seb Jensen for Last Level Studios. Watch on YouTube and Spotify, listen wherever you get your podcasts, catch highlights on TikTok, Reels and Shorts, or visit lastlevel.co.uk/podcast for more info.